Kim Tae-ho pulled his worn leather jacket tighter as he walked through the busy corridors of Nexus 7 trading station. The place buzzed with activity. Aliens of all shapes and sizes moved around him, carrying cargo and talking in languages that sounded like music or static. He kept his head down and tried to blend in with the crowd. His ship, the Eternal Dawn, needed new power cells and food supplies. It was a simple job, nothing special. He had done this run dozens of times before. Dock at the station, buy what he needed and leave. No one ever paid attention to a human freighter pilot. Humans were common enough in this part of the galaxy. The security checkpoint stood ahead of him like a metal monster. Every person had to pass through it before entering the main station. Tae-ho had walked through hundreds of these scanners on different worlds. They checked for weapons, diseases, and illegal goods. The process took maybe 30 seconds. He stepped into the scanning booth. Blue light washed over him from floor to ceiling. The scanner hummed its usual tune, a soft electronic song that meant everything was normal. Tae-ho waited for the green light that would let him continue. Instead, the humming stopped. Red lights began flashing all around the booth. Warning sounds filled the air like screaming sirens. The scanner's voice, usually calm and robotic, now spoke with urgent tones that echoed through the checkpoint area. Bioscan anomaly detected. Subject classification in progress. Warning. Warning. Extinction-Class survivor identified. Species termination event witness confirmed. Threat assessment level, incalculable. Every conversation in the checkpoint area stopped. Aliens turned to stare at the booth where Tae-ho stood frozen. He had never heard those words before, but they sounded bad. Very bad. Commander Rixta rushed over from her security desk. She was a Veltar, tall and blue-skinned with 4 arms that moved like liquid metal. Her species had built most of the scanning technology used throughout the galaxy. If anyone understood what was happening, it would be her. Step out of the booth slowly, she commanded. Her voice carried the weight of absolute authority. Tae-ho raised his hands and walked out. The red lights kept flashing. Other security officers surrounded him, but they kept their distance. They looked afraid. Run the scan again, Rixta ordered. The scanner's voice replied immediately. Scan confirmed. Subject displays cellular damage consistent with reality trauma. Temporal scarring detected across multiple tissue samples. Classification confirmed. Extinction-Class survivor. A Christine merchant nearby dropped his cargo containers. The crystal-like being's body began glowing with fear colors. Impossible, he whispered. There are only 3 confirmed Extinction-Class survivors in all of galactic history. Dr. Yoon Nari pushed through the crowd. She was human like Tae-ho, but she wore the clean white coat of a station scientist. Her dark eyes studied him with sudden recognition. I know you, she said quietly. You come through here every few months. You buy supplies and leave. You never cause trouble. Tae-ho nodded. He remembered her too. She sometimes worked at the human section of the station, helping with translation and paperwork. What does it mean, he asked. Extinction-Class survivor? Commander Rixta's forearms moved in complex patterns as she worked her control panel. Data flowed across multiple screens. According to our records, an Extinction-Class survivor is someone who witnessed the complete destruction of their home, species, or planet. Not just death, complete erasure from existence. The crowd around them grew larger. Word was spreading through the station faster than light-speed communication. Aliens whispered to each other in dozens of languages, but Tae-ho could understand the fear in their voices. Nari stepped closer to him. Where are you from? She asked. The question hit him like a physical blow. His mind went blank for a moment, then filled with images that hurt to remember. Blue skies, green oceans, cities full of people who looked like him. Earth, he whispered. The scanner immediately responded to his voice. No record of planet-designated Earth in galactic databases, cross-referencing human colony worlds. No match found for specified origin. Nari's face went white. That's impossible. I've been studying human culture for years. There are references to Earth in dozens of texts and documents. Bring up human historical records, Rixta commanded. Data filled the screens around them. human colony worlds, trade routes, cultural information. But as they watched, something strange happened. References to Earth began disappearing from the files. Text changed before their eyes. Images flickered and vanished. "The system is correcting itself," one of the Veltar technicians reported. "It's eliminating inconsistent data." Tejo felt sick. This had happened before many times. People would start to remember Earth, but then the memories would fade. The universe itself seemed to forget his homeworld. 23 years ago, he said, his voice growing stronger. 23 years ago, there were 847 humans working at a mining station in the Outer Rim. We got word from Earth to return home immediately. Emergency evacuation. The crowd listened in complete silence. When we arrived, at the coordinates where Earth should have been, there was nothing. Empty space. Not even dust or radiation. Our navigation computers couldn't find the planet. Our communication logs showed messages from a world that didn't exist. Nari grabbed his arm. What happened to the other survivors? Tejo's eyes filled with tears he had held back for over 2 decades. They started forgetting. One by one, they convinced themselves they had come from colony worlds. They rewrote their own memories rather than accept the impossible truth. "But you remember," Rixta said. "I remember everything. The smell of rain on Earth's surface, the sound of birds singing in the morning, my sister's laugh, the way coffee tasted in the small shop near my apartment. I remember all of it, and it hurts every single day." The scanner spoke again, its voice somehow gentler now. "Cellular analysis indicates subject has experienced temporal reality trauma. Scarring patterns suggest exposure to existence erasure event. Classification maintained, Extinction-Class survivor." Ambassador Kethvar arrived at the security checkpoint. The tall, elegant being moved through the crowd with diplomatic authority. His species, the Ethereals, served as mediators for the United Species Council. "Mr. Kim Tejo," he said formally, "by the authority of the United Species Council, you are requested to provide testimony regarding the extinction event you witnessed. This information is vital to galactic security." Tejo looked around at all the faces watching him. Aliens from dozens of worlds all waiting to hear his story. For 23 years he had carried the memory of Earth alone. Now, finally, someone was ready to listen. "I'll tell you everything," he said. "But you might not believe me." "We'll believe you," Nari said quietly. "The scars don't lie." The interrogation room was white and cold. Tejo sat at a metal table across from Ambassador Kethvar and Commander Rixta. Dr. Nari stood near the wall, taking notes on her datapad. The room's recording devices captured every word. "Begin with the day your world disappeared," Kethvar said. His voice was calm but serious. Tejo closed his eyes and let the memories flow back. "We were at mining station Omega 7, deep in the asteroid belt. The work was hard, but the pay was good. 847 humans, all working for the same company." He opened his eyes and looked at Nari. "Park Min-ho was my best friend. He talked about his wife back on Earth every day, showed me pictures of her all the time. Said he was saving money to buy her a house near the ocean." "Continue," Rixta said, her forearms working on different data panels. "The emergency signal came in the morning. All mining operations stopped immediately. Return to Earth for evacuation. Priority Alpha status. We had never seen anything like it before." Tejo's hands began to shake as he remembered. The trip back took 18 hours. We were all excited to go home early. Some of the workers had been away for 2 years. They couldn't wait to see their families. The room was completely quiet except for the soft hum of recording equipment. When we reached Earth's solar system, everything looked normal at first. The sun was there. The other planets were in their correct positions, but when we got to where Earth should have been, he stopped talking and stared at his hands. There was nothing, not wreckage or debris, not even empty space where a planet should have been. It was like Earth had never existed in the first place. Our ship's computer couldn't locate the planet in its navigation files. Kethvar leaned forward. "What did the crew do?" "At first, We thought it was a navigation error. The captain ran full system diagnostics. We checked our coordinates dozens of times. Everything said we were in the right place. Tejo stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see the busy traffic of ships coming and going from the station. Then people started getting confused. The communication logs showed messages from Earth, but when we tried to play them back, the files were corrupted. Photos of home became blurry. Personal items that came from Earth began to look strange and unfamiliar. Nari looked up from her datapad. What kind of personal items? Minho had a wedding ring, gold with small diamonds. The day after we arrived at Earth's coordinates, he looked at it and said he didn't remember where he got it. Said it didn't look like something he would buy. The memory hurt to speak aloud. Tejo had never told anyone this story before. By the end of the first week, half the crew believed they had come from Mars colonies. They had new memories of growing up on red dirt plains. They remembered dome cities and underground tunnels that never existed. But not you, Rixta observed. No, not me. I remembered everything perfectly. The blue sky, white clouds, green grass. I remembered the taste of fresh strawberries and the sound of ocean waves. While everyone else forgot, my memories became stronger and clearer. Kethvar made notes on his own device. What happened to your friend Minho? Tejo's voice became quiet and sad. 3 weeks after Earth disappeared, he threw his wedding ring into the ship's recycling unit. He said it was junk jewelry from some tourist shop. He couldn't remember having a wife. When I showed him the photos he used to carry, he said the woman looked like a stranger. He turned back to face the table. That's when I realized something terrible had happened. Not just the destruction of our world, but the erasure of everything connected to it. The universe was rewriting itself to remove all traces of Earth. Nari walked over to him. But you resisted this erasure. Why? I don't know. Maybe because I was born during a solar storm. Maybe because I fell into a temporal anomaly as a child. Or maybe I'm just broken in the right way. Tejo touched his chest where hidden scars marked his skin. All I know is that while everyone else forgot, I held on to every memory like my life depended on it. Commander Rixta pulled up new data on her screens. We've been analyzing your cellular structure during this interview. The scanner was correct. About temporal scarring. Your body shows signs of exposure to chronological disruption. What does that mean? Tejo asked. It means you were present when time and space were altered around you. Your cells remember the original timeline even though reality changed. Kethvar stood up and paced around the room. In 50,000 years of galactic civilization, we have records of only 3 Extinction-Class survivors. All of them witnessed events that removed entire species from existence. He stopped and looked directly at Tejo. But those were natural disasters or cosmic accidents. What you're describing sounds intentional. You think something deliberately erased Earth? Nari asked. The pattern is too clean, Rixta said, reviewing her data. Natural disasters leave evidence. Supernovas create radiation signatures. Black holes leave gravitational effects. But what Mr. Kim describes is perfect elimination. Tejo nodded. We called it the silence. Whatever destroyed Earth didn't just kill people or break apart the planet. It made Earth never have existed in the first place. The room fell quiet as everyone considered the implications. If this force still exists, Kethvar said slowly, it represents a threat to every world in the galaxy. It's still out there, Tejo said with certainty. I can feel it sometimes like a cold wind in space. It's patient and methodical. Earth wasn't its first target and it won't be the last. Nari sat down heavily in a nearby chair. I've been studying extinct human cultures for years. References to lost colonies and disappeared settlements. I thought they were just historical gaps in the records. They weren't gaps, Tejo said. They were erasures. The silence has been hunting humanity for a long time. Earth was just the biggest target. Rixta's screen suddenly flashed with new information. Sir, she said to Kethvar, we're receiving reports from the outer sectors. 3 colonies have gone silent in the past month. No distress signals, no debris. Just gone. What species? the ambassador asked. The hegemony of Cole? They were developing new dimensional technology. Tai-Ho felt ice form in his stomach. How advanced were they? Nearly as advanced as humans were before Earth disappeared, Rixta replied. The pieces fell into place in Tai-Ho's mind like a terrible puzzle. It targets species that get too advanced. Humanity was developing dimensional travel when Earth vanished. If the Cole are reaching the same level, they're next, Nari finished. Kethavar activated the room's emergency communication system. This is Ambassador Kethavar. I need immediate contact with the United Species Council. We have a galaxy-wide extinction event in progress. As alarms began sounding throughout the station, Tai-Ho realized his long, lonely vigil was over. For 23 years, he had been the only person who remembered Earth. Now, finally, someone was listening to his warning, but it might already be too late. The United Species Council chamber buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from hundreds of worlds filled the massive circular room. High Counselor Velron stood at the center, his ancient form glowing with the wisdom of 1,000 years. Tai-Ho sat in the witness section, feeling small among so many powerful beings. Next to him, Dr. Nari squeezed his hand for support. Commander Rixta and Ambassador Kethavar sat nearby, ready to provide technical testimony. The council recognizes Kim. Tai-Ho of the Lost World Earth, Velron announced. His voice carried to every corner of the vast chamber. As Tai-Ho walked to the speaking platform, hundreds of alien eyes followed him. Some looked curious, others afraid. A few seemed to doubt his story entirely. Tell us about the silence, Velron commanded. Tai-Ho took a deep breath. It doesn't announce itself like an army or a weapon. It works quietly, perfectly. First, the world disappears. Then, slowly, all memory of that world fades away. People, places, cultures, everything gets erased as if it never existed. A representative from the Christine Coalition spoke up. You claim to remember a world that our most advanced computers cannot find. How do we know you're not suffering from temporal madness? Before Tai-Ho could answer, the chamber's main display screen lit up with new data. Commander Rixta had uploaded her scanner results for everyone to see. These are cellular scans of Mr. Kim, she explained. Notice the temporal scarring throughout his tissue. This damage can only occur when someone experiences reality alteration while remaining conscious and aware. The Christine representative studied the data. Impossible. No biological creature can survive that level of chronological trauma. Humans are unusual, said a new voice from the back of the chamber. Everyone turned to see Captain Lee Dongwu walking down the main aisle. He was human like Tai-Ho, but taller and more muscular. His uniform showed he commanded a deep space exploration vessel. I didn't know any other humans survived, Tai-Ho said as Dongwu approached the platform. There are more of us than you. Think, Dongwu replied. We just learned to hide what we remembered. He turned to address the council. I was part of a research station studying dark matter when Earth vanished. Like Mr. Kim, I retained my memories while my colleagues forgot. I've spent 20 years searching for other survivors. High Counselor Velron leaned forward with interest. How many survivors have you found? 17 confirmed, maybe more. We stay scattered across the galaxy to avoid detection. But we all remember Earth, and we all carry the same temporal scars. The chamber erupted in conversation. If 17 humans had survived Earth's erasure, it meant the threat was even larger than they had realized. Science Officer Ral then, a tall Christine with brilliant blue body crystals, approached the platform. If I may, counselors, I have been analyzing the data patterns described by these survivors. She activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. Star charts appeared showing the galaxy from different time periods. Look at these gaps in our historical records. Every few thousand years, entire civilizations simply vanish from our databases. Not destroyed in wars or disasters, completely erased. The display zoomed in on different sectors, highlighting empty spaces where star systems should have contained inhabited worlds. The Vorthan Empire, gone 4,000 years ago. The Machine Collective, erased 7,000 years ago. The first builders, eliminated 15,000 years ago, all of them were approaching similar levels of technological advancement. Murmurs of fear rippled through the chamber. Many of the counselors recognized the names Ral then mentioned, but only as myths and legends. How many? Velron asked quietly. At least 47 major civilizations over the past 50,000 years, possibly more. The erasure process makes it impossible to know the exact number. Tejo felt sick thinking about all those lost worlds, lost people, lost cultures. Billions of beings erased from existence with no one left to remember them. What triggers the erasure? Asked the representative from the ethereal collective. Dongwu stepped forward. Advanced dimensional technology. Every species that gets close to breaking through the barriers between realities becomes a target. But why? The Christine Coalition representative demanded. What purpose does this serve? Maybe it's not purposeful, Nari said, rising from her seat. Maybe it's defensive, something protecting itself from species that might discover its existence. The chamber fell silent as everyone considered this possibility. Suddenly, all the communication panels around the room began flashing red emergency signals. Admiral Thekra of the Galactic Defense Force appeared on the main screen, his reptilian features tight with worry. Counselors, he said urgently, we're receiving reports from the coal sector. 3 more worlds have gone dark in the past 6 hours. No communications, no sensor readings, nothing. Velran stood up with alarm. Evacuate the remaining coal worlds immediately. Sir, that's the problem. When we sent ships to investigate, the crews returned with no memory of why they had been dispatched. According to their logs, they were conducting routine patrols in empty space. The terrifying implications hit everyone at once. The erasure wasn't just affecting the targeted worlds, it was spreading to anyone who tried to help. Tejo realized he was the only person in the chamber who truly understood what was happening. It's starting again, he said loudly. The silence is active. The coal must have reached the threshold. What threshold? Velran demanded. The point where a species becomes dangerous to whatever controls the silence. Earth was developing dimensional travel when we were erased. If the coal were researching similar technology, more emergency reports flooded in. Coal colonies throughout their home sector were vanishing one by one. Rescue ships sent to investigate returned with confused crews who insisted they had found nothing unusual. Captain Dongwu grabbed Tejo's arm. We have to get to the coal home system before it's too late. You're the only person who can remember what happens during an erasure event. It's suicide, Rixta protested. No one can survive that level of reality distortion. I already have, Tejo said grimly. My scars prove it. Maybe that makes me immune, or maybe it just makes me the right kind of broken to witness the impossible. High Counselor Velran made a decision that would change the fate of the galaxy. Assemble a joint task force. Mr. Kim will accompany the mission as an observer and witness. If we're going to fight something that erases reality itself, we need someone who can remember what we're fighting. As the council chamber erupted into organized chaos, Tejo felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. 23 years ago, he had failed to save Earth. Now he had a chance to save another world from the same fate. But first, he had to survive getting close enough to the silence to understand what it really was. And that meant flying directly into the place where reality went to die. The task force ship Unity traveled through hyperspace toward the coal home system. Tejo stood on the bridge watching the stars streak past like silver tears. In 12 hours, they would reach a place where reality itself was under attack. Captain Dongwu commanded the bridge with quiet confidence. The crew included beings from 7 different species, all volunteers who understood they might not return from this mission. Dr. Nari worked at the science station, studying the temporal scanner data they hoped would protect them from the silence. Science. Officer Rao then approached Tejo with her latest findings. I've been analyzing your cellular scars in more detail. The patterns suggest you were at the exact epicenter of the erasure event when Earth disappeared. I was on the surface, Tejo confirmed, visiting my sister in Seoul when the mining station sent the emergency recall. I had to take a transport ship to reach the mining station, but by then Earth was already gone. That's impossible, Ral then said, her crystal body flickering with confusion. If you were on Earth's surface during the erasure, you should have been erased along with everything else. Tejo touched the hidden scars on his chest. Maybe I was. Maybe I'm just an echo of someone who used to exist, held together by memories too stubborn to die. Before Ral then could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Commander Rixta's voice came over the communication system. All hands to stations. We're dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the coal system. The bridge crew worked frantically as the ship returned to normal space. The main view screen showed what should have been a busy star system with dozens of inhabited worlds. Instead, they saw emptiness. Sensor readings? Dongwu asked. Nothing on long-range scanners, the Veltar navigation officer reported. But that's not possible. According to our star charts, there should be 15 planets and 3 space stations in this system. Nari looked up from her console with growing alarm. Captain, I'm reading temporal disturbances throughout this entire region. Reality is unstable here. As they watched, space itself seemed to ripple like water. Stars appeared and disappeared in the distance. Planets flickered in and out of existence like ghosts. Take us to where the coal homeworld should be, Dongwu ordered. The ship moved carefully through the distorted space. Tejo felt a familiar cold sensation in his bones, the same feeling he'd had when Earth vanished. The silence was here, actively working. There, he said, pointing at a section of empty space. Something's happening there. At first, the view screen showed nothing but stars. Then, like a mirage becoming real, the outline of a planet began to appear. It looked normal at first. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. But as they got closer, they could see the planet was fading. Cities vanished first, then forests, then mountains. The world was being erased piece by piece. I'm detecting life signs, Nari reported. Millions of them. But they're changing. The readings keep shifting as if the life forms are being replaced with something else. Get us closer, Tejo said. I need to see what's happening to the people. The ship moved into low orbit around the dying world. The surface showed patches of normal landscape mixed with areas that looked like TV static. In the clear zones, they could see coal cities and vehicles moving normally. In the static zones, there was nothing. The inhabitants don't seem to notice. Anything wrong? Ral then observed. They're going about their daily lives while their world disappears around them. That's how it works, Tejo said sadly. The erasure changes their memories as it happens. They forget the parts of their world that have already been deleted. Dongwu made a difficult decision. Prepare a shuttle. I'm taking Mr. Kim down to the surface. Sir, that's extremely dangerous, Rixta protested through the communication system. The temporal distortions could kill you both. I'm the only person here who survived this before, Tejo said. If we're going to learn how to fight the silence, we need to understand how it works. The shuttle bay was busy with preparation. Tejo and Dongwu put on environmental suits equipped with the most advanced shielding technology available. Nari attached temporal monitors to their suits that would record everything they experienced. If something goes wrong down there, Nari said, these monitors might be the only proof left that you ever existed. The shuttle launched from the Unity and descended through the planet's atmosphere. As they got closer to the surface, Tejo felt the reality distortions getting stronger. His scars began to ache with phantom pain. They landed in what had been the coal capital city. Half the buildings were normal, occupied and functioning. The other half flickered between existing and not existing. Tejo and Dongwu left the shuttle and walked through the strange streets. Coal citizens moved around them, but they acted as if the humans weren't there. More disturbing, they seemed unaware that half their city was disappearing. Look at that, Dongwu said, pointing to a coal family having a picnic in a park. The park existed in patches. Where the family sat, the grass was green and the trees were healthy. But 10 meters away, there was nothing but empty gray space. The family continued their meal as if nothing was wrong. Excuse me, Tejo said to the father, in the universal trade language. The Cole looked up with friendly eyes. "Hello, travelers. Beautiful day for a picnic, isn't it?" Taeho looked around at the half-erased landscape. "Don't you notice anything strange about your city?" The father looked confused. "Strange? No, everything is perfectly normal. This is how our city has always been." When Taeho pointed to the areas of gray nothing, the Cole father simply didn't see them. His mind had already adapted to the new reality where those places never existed. Dongwoo grabbed Taeho's arm. "Look at that building." They watched as a tall apartment building began to flicker. People were visible through the windows, living their normal lives. Then the building became transparent and finally vanished completely. But the people who had been inside didn't fall or scream. They simply weren't there anymore. And none of the other Cole in the area seemed to notice that. Hundreds of their neighbors had just stopped existing. "This is how it happened on Earth," Taeho said, his voice hollow with remembered pain. "Reality changes around the victims, but they adapt to each change instantly. They never realize what they're losing." As they explored more of the city, the pattern became clear. The silence was working systematically, erasing the most advanced parts of Cole civilization first. The dimensional research facilities had vanished completely. The universities were flickering in and out of existence. Soon, only the most basic settlements would remain, and then those, too, would disappear. "We need to find their dimensional research," Dongwoo said. "If we can understand what triggered this erasure, maybe we can stop it." They made their way to where the main research center should have been. The building was still partially there, but fading fast. Inside, they found Cole scientists working at equipment that flickered between real and imaginary. One of the scientists, an elderly Cole with silver scales, looked directly at Taeho with sudden clarity. "You're not supposed to be here," she said. "This timeline is being corrected. Visitors from stable reality aren't allowed." "What did you discover?" Taeho asked urgently. "What brought the silence here?" The scientist's eyes filled with fear and understanding. "We found them, the first ones, the species that became the silence. They're not destroying us out of malice. They're trying to protect the universe from making the same mistake they made." Before she could explain further, the scientist and her entire laboratory faded into gray nothing. Taeho and Dongwoo found themselves standing in an empty lot where a building had existed moments before. But Taeho's temporal scars had recorded everything. Deep in his cellular memory, the truth about the silence was now preserved. They had to get back to the Unity and warn the galaxy what they were really fighting against. Back aboard the Unity, Taeho sat in the medical bay while Dr. Nari scanned his temporal scars with every instrument available. The patterns had changed during his visit to the dying Cole world, recording information that might save the galaxy. "The cellular memory is incredible," Nari said, studying the readouts. "Your scars have absorbed and preserved data about the silence that no normal scanner could detect." Captain Dongwoo paced the small room, frustrated by what they had witnessed. That scientist said the silence was trying to protect the universe. Protect it from what? Taeho closed his eyes and let his scarred memories surface. The information felt like ice water flowing through his mind, but he forced himself to experience it fully. "I can see them," he said quietly. "The first ones. They were the galaxy's first intelligent species, billions of years ago. They became so advanced that they learned to manipulate the fundamental forces of reality itself." Images flowed through his consciousness like a terrible movie. He saw a species of pure energy beings who could reshape matter with their thoughts, travel through dimensions like walking through doors, and alter the flow of time itself. "What happened to them?" Nari asked. "They made a mistake. They tried to make the universe perfect. They wanted to eliminate chaos, suffering, and death by controlling every aspect of reality. But when they gained that power, they discovered something horrible." Taeho opened his eyes and looked at his friends with deep sadness. "Consciousness itself is chaos. Intelligence, creativity, growth, love, all of it comes from randomness and imperfection. When they tried to perfect reality, they started to eliminate the very things that made life worth living." Dongwoo stopped pacing. "So they became the silence voluntarily?" "They had no choice. They realized that any species advanced enough to manipulate reality would eventually make the same mistake. So they transformed themselves into a force that prevents other civilizations from reaching that level. The medical bay fell silent, except for the humming of the ship's systems. The implications were staggering. The silence wasn't evil. It was trying to save the universe from cosmic perfection. But they're wrong, Nari said firmly. Not every species would make the same choice they did. How can we prove that? Dongwu asked. Taeho stood up from the medical table, his mind working through possibilities. We show them something they didn't expect. Humanity has always been different. We survived the erasure of Earth because we're stubborn and chaotic, and refuse to accept impossible situations. Commander Rixta's voice came through the communication system. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the United Species Council. High priority. The bridge of the Unity buzzed with activity when they arrived. The main view screen showed High Counselor Velron addressing them from the council chambers. Captain Dongwu, what is your status? The ancient being asked. The Cole homeworld has been completely erased, sir, but we've learned crucial information about the silence. Mr. Kim's temporal scars have preserved data about their true nature. Velron leaned forward with interest. Explain. Taeho stepped in front of the communication pickup. The silence consists of the first intelligent species in the galaxy. They transform themselves into a reality correction force to prevent other species from making the same mistakes they did. What mistakes? Trying to perfect the universe by eliminating chaos and randomness. But, Counselor, I believe there's a way to communicate with them, to show them that not all species would make their choice. Before Velron could respond, every alarm on the bridge began sounding at once. Science Officer Rao then called out from her station. Captain, massive temporal disturbance approaching our position. The silence is coming directly for us. Through the view screen, they could see space itself bending and warping. Reality rippled like disturbed water. At the center of the disturbance, something vast and incomprehensible moved toward their ship. All hands prepare for temporal shielding, Dongwu ordered. But Taeho stepped toward the view screen. No, drop all shields. I want to talk to them. That's suicide, Rixta protested. I'm already dead, remember? I died when Earth was erased. I'm just a memory that refuses to fade away. Taeho turned to face his friends. But maybe that's exactly what they need to see. The silence reached the Unity and surrounded it with writhing energy that existed outside normal space and time. Taeho felt the familiar cold sensation as reality began to shift around them. But this time, instead of fighting it, he opened his mind completely to the experience. The bridge faded away and Taeho found himself floating in a space between dimensions. Around him, the first ones appeared as beings of pure thought and energy, ancient beyond measure and filled with infinite sadness. Why do you resist correction? Their combined voice asked. Your species has reached the threshold. You must be prevented from repeating our error. Because we're not you, Taeho replied. Humans have faced extinction dozens of times throughout our history, and we've always chosen to survive, rather than surrender to perfection. He opened his scarred memories to them, showing them everything he had experienced. The loss of Earth, the loneliness of being the only one who remembered, the pain of carrying impossible truths. You suffered greatly when your world was corrected. Yes, I suffered. But I chose to keep suffering rather than forget. That's what makes us different from you. We'd rather live with chaos and pain than give up our right to choose. The first ones paused, considering this concept. What would your species do with unlimited power over reality? Taeho thought about all the humans he had known. Flawed, stubborn, brave, foolish humans who never gave up even when they should. We'd probably make terrible mistakes. We'd fight about how to use the power. We'd create beauty and ugliness in equal measure. But we'd never try to eliminate chaos entirely, because chaos is what makes us human. Show us. The challenge hung in the dimensional void between them. Taeho realized what they wanted. Proof that humanity could handle advanced power without becoming like them. I can't show you alone, but I can anchor the memory of everyone who was erased. Every human who died when Earth vanished, every Cole who disappeared, every member of the 47 civilizations you've eliminated. Their memories live in my scars. Tejo reached deep into his temporal scarring and began to release every stored memory of every erased being. Billions of personalities, dreams, hopes, and fears flowed out of his cellular structure and into the space around them. The first ones watched in amazement as an entire galaxy's worth of erased civilizations came back to life as pure memory and consciousness. Each being was different, chaotic, imperfect, and absolutely determined to exist despite the impossibility of their situation. This is unexpected, the first ones admitted. You preserve chaos itself as a living force. That's what consciousness is, Tejo said as his strength began to fade. Releasing so much stored memory was killing him, but he pressed on. It's the universe learning to know itself through billions of different perspectives. You can't perfect that without destroying it. The memories of the erased civilizations surrounded the first ones, singing songs of defiance and hope that they had never heard before. Species that refused to be forgotten, cultures that insisted on their right to exist, individuals who chose love and growth over perfection and stagnation. Perhaps, the first one said slowly, we have been in error. Reality began to shift again, but this time in the opposite direction. Instead of erasure, Tejo felt the universe expanding, making room for possibilities that had been eliminated long ago. We will end the corrections, the first ones decided. But the erased worlds cannot be restored. That would create paradoxes, beyond even our power to control. I understand, Tejo said. But maybe the memory of them can help guide the species that survive. The dimensional space began to fade as Tejo found himself back on the bridge of the Unity. His friends surrounded him, but he could barely see them. Releasing the stored memories had drained his life force almost completely. Did it work? He whispered to Nari. The temporal disturbances are fading throughout the galaxy, she said, tears in her eyes. The silence is withdrawing. Dongwu knelt beside him. What about you? Can the medical bay help? Tejo smiled weakly. I was never really alive anyway. Just a memory of Earth that refused to fade. But now that memory has a purpose. As consciousness slipped away, he felt something unexpected. All around the galaxy, the survivors of erased worlds were finding each other. Humans who had hidden their memories for decades, Cole who had escaped the erasure, members of other eliminated species who had somehow endured. They would become the memory keepers, dedicated to preserving the stories of lost worlds and preventing future extinctions. Not through force, but through the simple act of remembering. Earth was still gone. The erased civilizations couldn't be restored. But their legacy would live on in the choices made by the species that survived. And in the end, Tejo realized that was the most human thing of all, turning tragedy into hope and making sure that no sacrifice was ever truly forgotten.